Hi, I'm Kelsey, and that's my boyfriend Jared. And in May of 2024, we were in Gion, Japan, on the famous street of Sannezaka. This activity will be a surprise to many people, as Jared and I are not married. But when Jared heard about this ring making activity at Glänta in Gion, he really wanted us to do it. And it was a really memorable activity, so we wanted to share it with everyone. We were the very first people in the shop that day, and everyone bowed to us as we walked in. It was really fun. We booked the very first appointment. The day before, the shop had been almost too crowded to go into, so this was a more unique experience. Downstairs, you can buy rings like a normal jewelry shop, and they took us upstairs to their workshop and gave us a private lesson on making textured metal rings.
So sophisticated.
We had to fill out some paperwork and decide what type of metal we wanted for the rings. And they gave us these cute aprons. And then we got to work on them. We had to heat up the rings and then size them to just the right size by hammering them on a ring sizer. We made each other's rings. Then we polished the inside. And finally added the hammered texture. Our teacher was so nice and took video for us. She was so cute. She seemed to understand the Instagrammableness of it all. The workshop was really beautiful, and it was really cool to see the historical street from a new vantage point. This was a really fun activity to do on Sannezaka, the same historical street we were on in the previous video with the Ghibli store. The road and its famous steps were a little more crowded than when we arrived, but still not very crowded. The rings turned out so beautiful. I love you, Jared. After the rings, we celebrated with some lemonade and ice cream, and we took a bit of a stroll around Gion. We walked up and around some more residential neighborhoods. Then we ended up back on the stairs at Sannezaka. These steps have a spooky legend associated with them. I had forgotten about this story, but Jared reminded me after the last vlog. That's true. The legend is if you fall on the steps at Sannezaka, you will die within 3 years. But if you carry a gourd, it will protect you from the curse. And there were shops selling gourds, though we didn't manage to take any pictures of those. I think Jared did get some hot sauce from another store here somewhere. Hatsune Antiques was on these steps, and it was such an excellent visit. Yeah. They said it was okay if I filmed there, and it was like a tiny free museum where you were allowed to touch all of the stuff. I ended up buying a hairpin there. It was under 500 yen, so there was a wide range of prices in the shop. And a highlight was the metal worked bugs. I've seen these on Instagram, and I was really fascinated to see them in real life. Everything there was really beautiful, and it was a really great opportunity to see some Japanese arts up close and personal, including this samurai sword. Kiyomizu-dera is the traditional shopping area in front of Kiyomizu-dera Temple. We had to walk through this massively busy area to get up here to this temple, like its neighboring Sannezaka. It was really packed and it actually got us a bit freaked walking through there. Kiyomizu-dera Temple was founded in 778, but it suffered 10 major fires since then. So these current buildings were built in 1633. The temple has an interesting founding story. A monk named Kenshin from Nara was told in a dream to leave the southern lands. Kenshin traveled north until he found a waterfall on Mount Otoa, where we are, apparently. Everything has been really steep. An old hermit in a thatched hut was practicing asceticism at this waterfall, a form of severe self discipline and avoidance of all forms of indulgence. This hermit tasked Kenshin with carving a Kannon statue, the goddess of mercy, and building a sacred hall. The hermit then vanished. I'm summarizing, but eventually they started this temple, named it Kiyomizu-dera Temple, which Kiyomizu means pure water, after the purity of the Otoa Falls. We really only saw this Neomon gate at Kiyomizu-dera because there are so many temples in Japan. You can only pay to get into, so many on one trip. But this temple deserved its own little section because we saw this funny koi fish and turtle. He's coming towards us. Beautiful. We decided to avoid the crowds and walked through Otani Cemetery, which was nearby, and down to its corresponding Otani Hombyo temple. In Japanese Buddhist rituals, the deceased is cremated and buried in a family grave. The tombstone is the entire family's marker. Highlights of this cemetery included the only bird in today's video, this cool crow, and this guy working on a neighboring roof. We didn't really realize it when we first walked in, but it turned out to be the graveyard of Otani Hombyo Temple and Mausoleum, where the remains of Shinran are housed. Shinran was very important in 13th century Japanese Buddhism. He's the founder of the Shinran sect. We've talked about him in a couple previous episodes. He passed away in 1263 at 90 years old and was buried in Higashiyama, Kyoto, which is generally this region, but his remains were moved to this exact location by his followers in 1603. The temple had beautiful grounds. It was right off of the main road. It had a much more modern, brutalist architecture section connected to these traditional temple buildings. Something very memorable about this temple that we discussed over and over again were these lotus plants that claimed to be over 2,000 years old. I believe this main building houses the altar where Shinran's remains are stored. I was able to capture audio of some monks chanting here. This cave was where Shinran studied, but they also maybe moved it from its original location. Apparently there's evidence that it once had a door. Is this another example of asceticism? I don't know. For some morbid reason, I am fascinated with immurement, the act of entombing someone alive, and asceticism feels like a cousin of immurement. We actually sat down in this temple for a while, so I captured this interesting view from inside. Jared had been having a hard physical day. He was really tired, maybe because we walked all over Kyoto the day before. There was a somberness to this whole temple because it is a mausoleum, so I suppose some sad people didn't look too out of place there. We went back to the hotel. I had been scrapbooking every day because I wanted to keep up with it while we were on the trip. So I did that, and we ordered some more gyoza from the dumpling shop we ate at the day before. We watched some Japanese news, and we saw clips of the Hollyhock Festival parade we were at a couple of days earlier. Stay tuned for the next vlog, which was actually my favorite day on the trip, a big shopping day in Kyoto.